Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 172. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Sunday, March the 24th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. The beautiful, lovely, sunny, and now summer-like Western St. Charles County. It's been a long time coming. Those of you who live in the area know what I mean. We have had cold and rain basically since January. Actually, since October. We've had a day or two of good weather, but for the most part, it's been awful. This weekend was supposed to be a washout too. Friday was beautiful. Saturday was beautiful. It looks like at least up until this afternoon, we're going to have sunny in the 80s as well. So the beautiful weather has finally come to East Central Missouri, to Western St. Charles County, and I'm glad. It's about time. That's the one drawback to living in this part of the country. I mean, the trophy wife likes to say that living in the Midwest is easy. And what she means by that is wages are good, people are nice, cost of living is low, wages are high, so it's kind of easy to do your thing here in the Midwest. However, we get about 20 days a year of primo weather. Yesterday was one of those days. That's a big deal for me. The podcasts have been, I'm not going to say sporadic, but maybe not as regular. Maybe almost as often, but maybe not as regular. Not every Saturday morning, sometimes during the week, sometimes on a Sunday. But the reason being is because we're in the middle of this project, and actually have been in the middle of a project at the house since April 2019. We're building a pool and totally redoing the landscape. In the last month or so, I have been devoting a lot of my time to restructuring my yard. Outside of the pool, the yard was totally turned upside down, so it had to be rebuilt from the ground up. And we're in the process of doing that, probably 97% of the way done. The downside to that is now I have a yard and a landscape situation that almost requires a full-time gardener. That would be me. So a lot of time taking care of the grounds nowadays at the James Strong compound, but that's okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just stating a fact. So please stay tuned. The podcasts will not go away. They'll keep coming, but maybe not every Saturday morning. Maybe during the week. Maybe during the later in the weekend, some other time. But my goal again is to keep it to about one a week. So thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience, and please stay tuned. My essay today has to do with, the Bible says, and our Constitution says, all men are created equal. Actually, that's not necessarily true. Ask Covid-19. Of course, Covid-19, the coronavirus, is a inanimate object, so like your cat, you can't ask it a question and expect a reasonable answer. But my essay today has to do with the way the coronavirus, the way the COVID-19 disease seems to be affecting different people in a different way. And while I am not a doctor, while I am not an immunologist, while I am not an economist, I read a lot. Some would say I read too much, and maybe that's true, but I've read a lot, and I've come up with an opinion. And again, it's an opinion based in fact, and one of my favorite authors has helped me to form this decision. His name is Jared Diamond. He writes for the Wall Street Journal on a regular basis, and he also wrote a book that is arguably the best book, at least one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life, called Guns, Germs, and Steel. But I will I'll get on with that essay after I put a few notes out here, building up to the essay. but a few things to talk about that have little or nothing to do with the coronavirus, maybe a little bit to do with the coronavirus, but things that have to do with other things in my life as well, and just my opinion on certain things. Number one, in the podcast world, big story in the podcast world this week, Joe Rogan, who does the Joe Rogan Experience, and he's an outstanding podcast. He's arguably the best podcaster out there today, as far as if you rate him with viewers, audience, etc. He signed a deal with Spotify this week, and for $100 million. Not bad for a guy who was a reality TV show host, fringe television actor, stand-up comic, MMA commentator, but he's made his real money now with his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience. Starting in September, I believe, he will be on Spotify exclusively. Maybe by the end of the year it's exclusive. I'm not sure. But Spotify paid him $100 million for exclusivity of all of his past episodes, and something like 1,200 of them, and also his videos. Now, Rogan has for years had problems with YouTube's policy with showing videos on the air. In other words, you can't reference an old YouTube video, even if you did it or if somebody else did it, without getting YouTube's blessing. That'll all go away. His videos will not be on YouTube, maybe just some highlights. He will not have his videos available on, or his podcast available on iTunes, I guess, which is where I get it, to be honest. But via Spotify. All indicators are that you don't have to subscribe to Spotify's premium service to get any of this. That, I guess, that will remain to be seen. But yeah, Joe Rogan, good for him. $100 million for his podcast. Joe Rogan, congratulations. This week was the anniversary of the Trophy Wife and I, 37 years. And so I bit the bullet and said, hey, even though it's in the middle of the week, let's go out to a restaurant. It had been months since we had done that. This part of the country has opened up a lot compared to the coasts. And basically, you can go to most any restaurant that's opened now. Maybe every other table is open. The waiters and that do things a bit differently. I will tell you that I love going to restaurants. When I travel on business, of course, I eat out a lot. And I probably eat out as much as I eat in during normal times, at least. And I will tell you that I was a bit standoffish at my first restaurant experience. I didn't like the waiter standing that close to me. He had on a mask, but it didn't fit properly. He kept going to rearrange the mask, and then he served his food with that hand that he kept rearranging his mask with. And I thought to myself, why don't you just keep the mask off? But it was different. I'm not blaming the waiter. I'm not blaming the restaurant. I'm basically blaming myself. And it's a mindset that perhaps I have, perhaps other people will have, but people are creatures of habit, okay? And when you become accustomed to one thing, it's hard to become accustomed to something else. Over the past month or two or three, I haven't been used to people standing next to me and giving me a plate of food, okay, or being in a public place and eating, because even in my place of employment, you cannot eat in the building. You have to go outside of the building to eat. So the only place that I've taken a meal in the past 2 or 3 months has been in my home or outside. So it was a bit odd, but I'll do it again. Of course, I'll go to a restaurant again, but slowly but surely, I'm easing into this stuff. So I don't know what your experiences have been in restaurants, but it was a bit odd for me. I read an article that was disturbing this week in the Wall Street Journal, which by the way, I have been reading the Wall Street Journal now, I'm not going to say exclusively, because I read a lot of different sources. And once upon a time, I mean, the Wall Street Journal has always been one of my go-to sources. But since I started paying the $19 a month to read everything on the Journal, I read it every morning. And it's a remarkable, as close to a unbiased opinion that you're going to get on in the traditional media source. Okay, it's not right wing, it's not left wing. Some are, but most are not. I enjoy it. I pay $19 a month to read it. It's the only publication that I pay to read, and it's well worth it. But I read a story in the Wall Street Journal this week that was disturbing at best, and it had to do with the refugee problem in Europe, and particularly in Greece. And the Greek islands have been for a long time a source for refugees, mainly because there's so many of them. You can go through from North Africa primarily, North Africa, Syria. You can just get on a boat and arrive in the Greek islands, many of which aren't really policed because there's so many of them. Also, you can go by land from Afghanistan. Okay, you can if you want to, you can walk to Greece. It takes a long time, but you can do it. So there's a lot of North African, Middle Eastern, and Afghani refugees in Greece. Well, the economy is decimated in Greece. I mean, it's been bad for a long time. They just started to recover. Now this coronavirus has totally decimated Greece. Not so much because people are dying from the COVID-19, but the tourism industry, which is a big deal in Greece. They get a lot of their money from the tourism industry. It's gone, okay? So their economy is they're in full recession in Greece. And they have absolutely no tolerance now for refugees. Here's what the Greek police, according to the Wall Street Journal, are now doing with refugees from North Africa, the Middle East, and Afghanistan. They live in these camps, and you have to have a permit. Okay, that permit lasts for 30 days. You then have to renew that permit. Now, what normally happens is they don't renew the permit, but the police catch them and say, look, you got to go to the police station and renew your permit. They do. They go back to the refugee camps. Now the police are coming into the tents in the refugee camps, demanding that they see the refugees' papers. Of course, they see them. They're out of date. They said, look, you got to come to the police station and renew your papers, which that's nothing new, okay? So they bring these refugees to the police station. They take their money. They take their phones. They take their clothes, except for their underwear. They beat them, take them to the Turkish border, and dump them and say, never come back again, or we will do this to you again. And they leave them naked and penniless on the Turkish border. This, my friends, is disturbing, because what we have in Greece, and if we're not careful, is going to happen in other parts of the world, is a new nationalism, a new tribalism, and a me-first type attitude that causes us to treat our fellow man in truly inhumane ways. Now, I am not a fan of illegal immigration. I am not a fan of illegal refugees just showing up at your doorstep and parking their carcass right there on your grounds. I'm not a fan of that at all. I'm a fan of legal and metered immigration, with refugees being accepted and embraced on a metered and counted and regulated basis, okay? But if you have somebody that shows up at your doorstep, you don't take their goods, strip them naked, and dump them on the border and say, get lost and never come back, or we'll do this to you again. That is inhumane. But that's what happens in difficult times. That's what happens when people are up against the wall. If your family has nothing or little, you don't want somebody else around. It's the whole adage of the old airplane scenario that I've made and given many, many times. Even on an airplane, they will tell you, before you take off. Here's what you do if you have a young child and the masks fall and there's an emergency. Take your mask and put your oxygen mask on